I just watched videos of Palestinians being burnt alive in their tents. Men, women, and children who were forced out of their homes, many of them already injured. There was a person connected to an IV line, waving, asking for help as they were being burnt alive. But people were forced to watch their brothers, sisters, and children burned to death, and they were unable to help them. This is the horror that we are forced to see day in and day out. And I'm just wondering, when is it that our politicians will break away with their so-called strategic agreements with the United States? When will our media stop portraying this as some sort of defensive war by Israel and keep centering their victims and their narratives and their spokespeople? When will they start to tell the truth about what's going on? Israeli narratives, Israeli victims of October the 7th are still centered in our media's narratives. We're still listening from Israeli leaders. We're still hearing about Hamas command centers in schools. We're still seeing them talk to and interview the victims of October the 7th as if we must live stuck in that moment forever, when Palestinians have faced October the 7th every single day since then and every day before then for the last 80 years. The fact that they keep going on and on about hundreds of hostages when Palestinians were already routinely, systematically abducted and tortured before October the 7th. And since October the 7th, when the situation has just gotten so horrific that it's difficult to talk about. They're torture chambers where they're just raping people, where they're just torturing them to death in all sorts of horrific, sadistic ways, and our media just completely ignores that. People are being taken every single day, and yet we must keep talking about the people that were taken on that one day. Why must we continue in this path of supremacy when New Zealand could be its own independent nation? Winston Peters, you say that you like to speak your mind. Well, why won't you tell the truth about what's going on? And I mean really tell the truth, not hint at it here and there. Why don't you sanction Israel? Why don't you do some real moves? Send the ambassador home. Stop supporting the US's war on Yemen. Judith Collins, don't you have a heart? Luxon, you say you're a Christian. What are some Christian values that we can draw on to look at this situation? Because there are children being burnt alive. Surely, no matter what your politics are, that's something you can condemn. Condemn. You keep condemning Hamas day in, day out. We get it. You condemn them. Will you condemn Israel? Because how many lives will it take before you'll actually do something? And I mean that genuinely. How many lives? There are tens of thousands. Some people are saying hundreds of thousands. People on the ground are saying they are being exterminated. This is a 2 million people population that's being held hostage in a concentration camp and being systematically tortured and murdered. And it's time to speak out. If you haven't yet, it's time to do so. If you're in the media, don't wait any longer. I know it's difficult that you've spent all this time playing along with Israeli narratives, doing as presumably your bosses have been, but it's time to break away from that and say, hey, there's a Holocaust going on. I think that's worth sabotaging my job potentially, or whatever consequences that might come from calling out the obvious. People are being tortured and exterminated en masse. And we all need to do something about it. As humanity, we need to do something about it. This video might not do anything, but I can't just sit by and watch as my siblings get tortured and murdered and humiliated, or attempt to humiliate them, because let me say this, and I want to end on this note. Even though all of you disgusting Zionists, the Israeli state, the media, our politicians, everyone who has supported the Israeli state, even though you have tried to paint us as villains, I just saw one news clip just a moment ago where you once again showed a woman in a hijab talking about how she wants death to America and Israel without telling us her name, why she was crying, who her family was, who she's mourning. We don't hear anything about her. We just see her saying something in anger. And you do that. You do that to people every single day. You manipulate them. You tell them that our people are bad and hateful and terrorists. And even though you want to paint our men as horrific, horrible, terrorists, scary monsters, let me tell you something, and let me say this really clearly. All that I have seen, and everyone that I know, all that we've seen, is Palestinians being incredible heroes. I have never in my life seen a people so honorable, so resilient, so beautiful, so kind and so generous in my life as I have seen from the Palestinian people. And the more that you try and denigrate them, the more their light shines. So let me just tell you that your efforts, they can and they do backfire. And although I appeal to your sense of humanity, I also say to you that no matter what you do, Palestinian people will be free, and we will all be free from this demonic, supremacist, genocidal world order that we're being subjected to at the moment. Kia kaha e hoa ma.